G'day, TJ. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing? It's the morning for you. It's
Yeah,
what,
it's
evening
morning for
for
me.
me.
It's quite a nice autumn morning here. It's been pretty warm since summer. So, summer was actually pretty cold here, which is, and when I say cold, I temper it.
Yeah. No, we're coming out of our winter. I live in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. Our winter is basically just wet.
Yeah,
Uh, Winter's optional. So if we want snow, we can go to the mountains.
yeah, right.
But it's been pretty rainy lately. We're on the cusp of going into the dry season where it doesn't rain. And
Mm.
during that time, we get a lot of storms rolling through. So we've had a lot of big thunderstorms and a lot of hail this year.
Yeah, wow. Yeah.
That I'm looking forward to some nicer weather though.
Yeah, well, we've had heaps of rain, and it was forecast actually to rain today, but it doesn't look like it's going to so far anyway. Maybe later.
Keeps it green up here at least.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. No doubt we'll be back in a drought at some stage in the next couple of
Right.
years. So it's always that big long cycle that you get with La Nina and El Nino. Anyway, let's stop talking about the weather and talk a little bit about photography. Tell people who you are and why you do what you do.
Sure. My name is TJ Thorne, and I am a photographer based out of the beautiful Pacific Northwest. I live just outside of Portland, Oregon, and I'm a professional photographer. I teach workshops. I have a book coming out, which I think we're going to talk about. And basically, my work focuses on the calming simplicity that can be found in nature through personal moments. I'm really big on engaging with nature in a very personal and intimate way. We all go to nature for our specific things and our specific needs, and mine is that mental clarity and feeling all right with myself. So that's what my work is based in and focuses on, and that typically results in smaller scenes, textures, patterns, and
Yeah,
intimate abstracts and stuff like that.
cool. Okay. So where did it all start? Was it something that you've always been passionate about? Is art something that you've always been into, or has it come a little bit later?
I'd say it came a little bit later. I never really considered myself a creative person growing up. I really liked art class in middle school and high
Sure.
school, but I didn't find photography really until I was forced to get a camera I was in culinary school, and
Okay.
one of my classes, so that was my original career right out of high school. And one of my classes was the job. I was an apprentice. So I had to take photos of the food and the things that I was doing to put in a workbook to
Yep.
submit for class credit. So I went out and bought a camera, and that's mainly what I used it for, but I really enjoyed it. So I took it with me I went to a lot of like punk rock shows, and
Sure.
skateboarding and snowboarding was in my spare time. And I just always had my camera with me and playing around with it with that. And in 2000, I grew up in Pennsylvania, which is on the east coast of the United States. And
Yep.
in 2021, or in 2001, I moved to the Pacific Northwest in Portland. And out here, nature is just way more abundant, way more accessible.
Mm.
So I grew up with a forest in my backyard. So nature was just always a part of my life. I played outside. I rarely watched TV. I didn't play video games. I spent all my time outside.
Sure.
So
Sure.
naturally, that's part of why I wanted to move to the Pacific Northwest. So when I moved to the Pacific Northwest, I go hiking and spend time out in nature, go to the beach. My camera was with me, so it slowly started transitioning, and I still didn't really consider it like an art form. I liked recording things. I liked being in this little 3x2 viewfinder and
Yep.
taking pictures of things. And not until I think it was 2011, I discovered 500px,
Right.
and I realized that there was like a nature photography community.
Mm.
And I didn't know that. I knew of Ansel Adams, but I didn't really know that there was a nature photography genre,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
all of my photography was just basically going out into nature and hiking. And most of my, like, all the photos that I shared them on hiking forums, because that was my main interaction with nature. I didn't share them on Instagram. Instagram wasn't even a thing back then.
Yeah.
So once I discovered that, the next time that I went out to Cape Kiwanda on the Oregon coast, I was like, I'm a nature photographer. And there was like a little bit more intent and understanding or an identity behind my work.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've really started to explore that and grab a hold of it and identify with it. And years later, I'm doing it full time. That's the Cliff's Notes version of it, but there's a lot of self discovery and things nestled into that story.
Yeah.
And
Okay. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind delving into some of that
yeah, go for it.
discovery and work through some of that process of when was the moment? Is there a specific moment, or do you think it was gradual where you started to realize, okay, what I'm doing is art, and I'm now more intentional about making art as opposed to going out and doing that recording?
Yeah.
Where did that sort of growth come from?
There wasn't really like a flashpoint of where I was like, now it's art. I remember when I was just really starting to focus on nature photography and identifying like as a photographer. Before I was just like, I was just using a camera. And I remember at the job that I was working, we had an artist on staff, and asked me, "Do you consider yourself an artist?" I'm like, No. He's like, "You are." I'm like, "No." Like there wasn't any like intent, or I was just
Yep.
like, I was going out and taking pretty pictures. And then, but that I remember that moment. And ever since then, I was like, I explore that. What does that mean? What does calling yourself an artist mean? And in my teaching, I find that some people are even hesitant to call themselves photographers. And labels are labels. I have my
Yeah. Yeah.
opinions about them now. I'm not necessarily a fan of them, but I think
They help people access what someone's thought process, what
right.
they're
It
doing.
can give you a better of an understanding, but it doesn't like it's not a definition. I don't like the definition, but
Yeah.
it can be used as like a way to understand and give yourself a little bit of a framework into your approach. But I've always been like a vulnerable person. I've had my mental struggles, and I've had struggles with alcoholism, and I talk about those things. And back prior, there was a switch in 2017, which I'll talk about. But prior to that, going out into nature was always like when I was going through my battle with alcoholism, like going to nature was like how I dealt with it. When went to nature, I knew that I was safe, that I wasn't going to drink, and
Yeah.
that instead of drinking and filling my mind and my heart with that guilt and that shame, I was out in nature trying to find gratitude that I get to be standing next to this creek in a beautiful place. And so that was really important to me, and I always wrote about that whenever I would release photos. So I would put a photo of a waterfall out and talk about what I was going through and things like that. So it became associated with my work, being vulnerable and talking. In 2017, there was like this realization that I had because I started becoming really detached from my work, where I wasn't really being fulfilled. Like the
Okay.
journeys out into nature were definitely fulfilling, but it felt like my work wasn't necessarily living up to the reasons that I went out.
Yeah.
So in
Right.
2017, my girlfriend and I took a trip out to southern Utah,
Mm-hmm.
and being from the Pacific Northwest and cutting my nature photography teeth on the wide angle landscape scenes, I had my wide angle on. I think I had a really cheap, terrible telephoto that I got some great shots on, but I had my wide angle on, and I'm in the desert with all this stuff that's really far away. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And we were sitting next to a river, and I saw these leaves, these cottonwood leaves, like blowing in the wind and flashing in the light. And I was like, what if I shot those not just as leaves, but like out of focus? And I composed with the colors and the tones and the flashing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Right.
And I did that. And I spent a good hour and a half, 2 hours almost, just like walking up and down the river, shooting things in harsh light out of focus. And I loved it so much. It was a different world. I was able to like get in my viewfinder, and it was like everything else just went away. And I realized that what I was drawn to was the more intimate plays of light and those personal moments. And I didn't understand that until I went to Utah, because before it became, I'm going to go to this place and capture a photo. So
Yeah.
my
So
work
you
stopped.
had a view in mind, or a particular.
Right. Yeah. Like I knew what the waterfall looked like. And you follow, there's like a formula. Like you want the stream in the lower third, and you want the splash
Yeah.
pool about here, and then the waterfall comes down, and then trees and foliage. There's kind of like a formula. A lot of waterfall shots, they're all pretty similar. So that was like my thing. And being a shot, a you wanted to differentiate yourself. So it was always just, what can I put in the foreground of this waterfall that nobody else put in? And that was the defining feature. It
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily my interaction with nature or telling the story of my interaction with nature. It was like, how good can this photo look, and how different and creative is the foreground going to be? But when I went to New York, like I having that realization and coming back to the Pacific Northwest, things just started to come together. And I realized that it is those smaller, intimate plays of light, those smaller scenes, those personal moments that I go to nature for,
Yep.
that I should be pointing my lens at. And so in 2017, there was like that epiphany, and my work just switched from I reclaimed the reason that I went to nature. Before, I was going out to take photos, and nature happened instead
Yep.
of going out into nature and having photos happen, right? I basically, like almost a switch, just threw away that whole results driven process. And now when I go to nature, I don't go with any kind of expectations. I don't even go expecting to use my camera. And oftentimes I don't. But when I do use my camera, it's because something in nature called to me and compelled me to point my lens at it. And then engaging with that, that's where I get everything that I need out of my trips to nature that keeps me sane and able to handle everything that I go through in life.
Yeah, interesting. So, in terms of that creative process, not going out with a preconceived notion of what the image is going to look like in the beginning, how do you resolve the images, I guess, that you're taking in post? Is that done in post processing and you go, okay, yeah, it's a selection process, these work, these don't, and it might be balance, it might be tonal balance or whatever, or is it something more deliberate in the field that you're doing to try and get as many results as you possibly can?
Yeah, I don't think about post at all in the field. Like even I might every once in a while I might think like something might creep in where compositionally where I'm like, okay, I need to frame this way and that kind of doesn't work for the composition, but I know that I can either stretch it out
Sure,
or
sure.
I can bring it, I can do things like that. Yeah. So there's very like maybe every once in a while something like that creeps in. And I do obviously I'm photographing and I can't lie and say that there's not a goal to capture an aesthetically pleasing photo, but the whole purpose of looking through my viewfinder is to engage in an intimate way on a deeper level with something that called to me.
Yeah.
So when I'm in the field, it's purely that I am just like I'm finding gratitude, I'm finding peace. It is my meditation. Nothing else exists in nature. And we're sitting at our computers. We got like Facebook, we got Twitter, we got Instagram, we have bills we need to pay, we have jobs we need to do, dishes we need to wash, traffic we need to sit in, lines we need to stand in. We have all these things that life has become. But when I'm in nature looking through my camera, I know that none of that matters. Like none of that matters, especially like if I'm off grid and I don't have a cell signal, like the email that I have to respond to, there's nothing I can do about it.
Yep.
Whatever, like I said, like whatever life has become, like it all changes. So when I go out in nature and that just all goes away. And I know that I can just like basically get down to the nuts and bolts of existence, which is just me and the thing that called to me. And I'll just pour everything that I have into that moment. That's what I get out of it. And when I come back into download everything to my computer, it's sometimes when I'm in the field, there's a moment where I'm like, okay, I really like this photo or whatever. But there are a lot of times where I've had really personal, intimate moments that I thoroughly enjoyed and got everything I needed out of it, but I never got a photo. I
Sure.
view it as when I get a photo, when I interact with these things and I come away with a photo from the experience that can represent it, it's a gift, but it's never the goal. So sometimes I get gifts from my experience and my interaction, but it's never the goal. Coming into post and picking which photo is going to work, that's when I start looking things at a little bit more composition and tones and stuff like that. But that's like my process. It's every photo is different. There are some photos that kind of I know in the field that it's going to be a portfolio photo, and sometimes it might take a year or two to go through my process and make it into the books.
Yeah. Speaking about the books and some of your other work, there's obviously themes that come to the fore, moving water, etc., etc. Do you go out with intent to build that body of work, or is it more you selecting that across your entire portfolio over time?
I've noticed that it's slowly transitioning to having intent, which I struggle with because that can be maybe considered a results driven mindset, but it's not necessarily something that I force myself to go out and find. But whenever I see something happening, like, oh, there's this theme that I'm working within that this could fit well within.
Sure.
So there is some of that creeping in a little bit that has more to do with my non-nature work, which I've been getting back into a little bit. But nature, it starts with the intent to go out and into nature. I have two distinct collections right now: Ebb and Flow, which is my water work, and then Figments of Place, which is more of an experimental, non-literal interaction with nature. And so Ebb and Flow, it's like anytime I'm around water, like I seek water out. If I have a decision to go to 100 places, I'm probably going to pick one that has water. When I go camping to get back to myself, it's at a very specific place where I don't have cell signal, where there's water. So water is just really important to me and my creative identity just because of what it gives to me. And then Figments of Place became born of, I don't travel a lot. I'm tethered to the Pacific Northwest. And when you keep going to the same places over and over again, and I'm not a sunrise, sunset shooter necessarily, I shoot a lot in the middle of the day, I have to be a little bit, dig into my creative tool bag and be a little creative about how I'm interacting with the scenes or interacting with the light so that I can present them in visually pleasing ways in a photograph or whatever have you. You lose your creative invigoration going to the same places and shooting the same things. Trying to get that excitement back, I just dig into that tool bag and I use multiple exposures, intentional camera movement, sometimes a combination of the two. And it gives me a different interaction with nature where I'm not necessarily looking at the scene in a literal way. I'm more like wondering what I can do with the textures and the tones and the different elements and see what the results are. So it makes it exciting because you never know what the results are going to be.
Yeah.
So it brings in a little bit of that invigoration and experimentation. And in doing that, you understand it gives you different things, right? So when I'm photographing water, it's usually like a very literal thing. I am photographing water, and it's really important. But I know what I'm doing, and every decision is calculated. But when I'm doing my Figments of Place, everything's a little bit more playful, a little bit more experimental. That mood to be like really personal and deep with nature, I typically photograph in a more literal way. But if I'm feeling that I need a little bit more freedom, a little bit more playfulness, a little bit more experimentation, then I typically play in the Figments of Place way. So I get different things out of each interaction.
Yeah. For me, that process of experimentation comes and risk taking, if you like, comes with the risk that you're going to suffer some failures or you're going to have setbacks in going, okay, that didn't quite work. How do you deal with that, and how do you try to maximize your success rate as opposed to your failure rate? And I guess just in that mindset of, okay, that didn't work, what are you trying to learn from that experience of that not working?
Okay. I like that question. Like I said, it's all about the process for me. I know that I have a luxury in that I do this for a living, that I go out a lot and that I can spend a week in one place and not really even pull my camera out. I don't take that for granted, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
But if you're doing the same things over and over again, you're going to get the same results, right?
Yeah.
And I think creativity is born of curiosity, right? And where's the curiosity if you already know what you're going to get?
Yep.
You have to be okay with, I encourage people. In one of my presentations and on workshops, I encourage people to take crappy photos, right? If you put the experience first and the process first, then the crappy photos don't matter because you're already getting what you want, right? And I don't think of photography as taking a photo. I think of it as exploring. The camera is just a tool that I use to intimately explore something. If I'm intimately exploring that and I don't get any good photos, but I enjoyed the process and I enjoyed that interaction, then there's nothing to worry about. But doing this for a living, I'd need to be putting images out. People expect to see images. There is a little bit of a balance with that. And I haven't put a fresh photo on my website since 2021. And I'm seeing the business results of that. I'm not getting my SEO has been affected by not really updating my website or driving traffic to it. And things like that. I'm starting to see parts of that, but I have a very low hit rate on images that go into my portfolio versus images that don't. But I think it's important that as long as you're like engaging with something in a genuine and authentic way, I think it's important to continue to do that because then you'll start to understand what works and what doesn't work. I can give the example of water. I remember the first time I pointed my camera at water, I didn't know what I was doing. It was direct light on water. And that's something that I really enjoy shooting. And the photos are terrible, but I really enjoyed it. So I kept doing it and I kept doing it. And back then I didn't know that it was going to become what it has become. It was just like, oh, that was cool. But once I realized that this is something that I need to explore with some consciousness behind it and things like that, then I really started to apply it and then learn what worked and what didn't work. So if I didn't allow myself to take those terrible photos, then I wouldn't be the photographer I am today, creating some of the most personally meaningful work that I've created.
Yeah, right.
And the whole exploring things and experimenting with your camera, you might stumble upon something that you didn't even know existed if you hadn't done that. Doing the same thing over and over again is going to produce the same results. And one of my biggest questions is asking myself, what if I did this? What if I did that?
Yeah,
Breaking rules, pushing my camera to its limits. I shoot at absurdly high ISOs a lot of the time. I point at the brightest light that I can find. I shoot in the fastest shutter speed. I'm testing every inch of my camera settings
yeah,
and
right.
pushing it to its limits. And it's resulted in like things that I love to interact with. I think there's a big case for being okay with your failures and taking terrible photos and just engaging in an authentic way.
Definitely, definitely. Talking about that experimentation and shifting your style of, or sorry, I'm going to restart that question.
Go for it.
Talking about using the tool in your hands, your camera, in different ways, obviously starting to master your craft is a key element of that success. What did you do to put in those hard yards to understand the field work that you were doing around that? Was it pure experimentation on your own, or were you engaging with mentors or talking to other people? How did that shape itself and come about?
Yeah, I think just through experience. I got to turn something off here real quick. Discord's beeping in the background.
Sure.
Okay, I'll start over. And hold on one more second because I got to send my son some money real quick.
You're right.
Okay, so the question was mentorship. Okay, all right, here we go.
Yeah. How did you master your craft, basically?
Okay, yes, I never took formal classes or training or anything like that. I started shooting film, so you learn pretty quickly shooting a
Yeah.
manual camera and stuff like that.
Becomes
Um,
expensive. The
yeah,
mistakes.
yeah, I'm actually films getting back into it, and that includes me. I got my film camera out, and I have 6 or 7 rules to be developed, and I have
Yeah.
all of the development stuff and all of the scanning stuff. So I'm going to do it all on my own, but I'm waiting for my son to finish his first ever roll film so we can develop it together. But yeah, no, yeah, I learned shooting film and just going through the process. It's not terribly hard to understand what a camera does and ways to use it. I think the hardest part is more wrangling your creativity and thinking outside the box and stuff, which can be hard for a lot of people. But
Yep.
I didn't have any formal training. I would say my biggest mentor is my one of my best friends, Alex Noriega.
Yep.
Back kind of when I was getting into it was more Photoshop. He's a big, huge computer nerd. So he really understands Photoshop and processing and stuff like that. And
Yeah. Sure.
in composition, so when I first got into nature photography, he was one of the first people that I found, and I started chatting with him, and we have slowly become really good friends.
Mm.
But yeah, the whole technical side of thing and the creative side of things was basically I'm just an introspective person. I like to understand things. I like to try things that are new, which is interesting. I'll talk about that. With photography and creativity, I like to try new things, but I'm a creature of habit in most every other way. That's one thing that photography has taught me about myself is that maybe I can take a little bit more risks because I take a lot of risks with my camera. And obviously, taking a terrible photo has way less repercussions than making a terrible life decision. But
Yeah.
something that I want to derive a little bit more from my creativity is learning to take a little bit more risks in life instead of always playing it safe and
Yeah.
being a
Right.
creature of habit.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, just going through the process and testing things out.
Speaking of taking risks, going out and making landscape photography in particular as a career, how did that come about? What was the thinking behind that, and what were you doing to set that up and say, okay, it was a hobby or it was a side hustle at some point for those that are getting into it, and making that decision to say, all right, I'm cutting the cord. I'm not got any other income. This is how I'm going to live. How
All
did that
right.
happen?
I grew up in the restaurant industry and cooking for a living. And I ended up in a retail food business. And I was a manager. I worked for this company for 16 years and ended up managing the kitchen and the department that sold all that food. We were making $200,000 a week in sales, and I had a team of 60 people that I was the boss of. And it demanded a lot. And in the process of, in the middle of working for this company is when I really started to get into photography and understand photography. And before I knew about nature photography, I knew that I was getting into photography a little bit more. And I was like, there's a way that I can make money with this. And my first thought was wedding photography. I hate weddings. And I'm not like, I like the fact, I've shot a couple weddings and I like the act of shooting, but I didn't necessarily like the processing. And it wasn't creatively fulfilling.
Sure.
So when I discovered nature photography was a thing, I put it in my ear. I was like, oh, how can I leverage this? I can do art fairs or things like that.
Yep.
And at the time, so I was becoming really good friends with Alex and my friend Ted Gore. And we talked a lot. Like we talked every single day, all day long. We had a chat going and it was just like we were just immersed in photography. And in the middle of that, I'm really working in kitchens is really starting to lose its sheen, right? It's a hard job. It's a labor of love. It's long hours. It's hard work. It's low pay.
Yep.
And being in management, there comes politics and red tape and like that whole side of things. And it just got to the point where I gave so much. I'm like an all or nothing type of person. I gave so much to that job and it just became really challenging. So I was like, I'm going to give myself a 5-year goal of doing this for a living. And I went to a showing of the Photo Cascadia people, Sean Bagshaw, Kevin McNeil, like all those guys. And those are people that I looked up to and they had a showing. So I went there to meet them. And I remember talking to Kevin McNeil and saying, oh, I'd like to be able to do this for a living. He's like, yeah, just do a workshop. Just do a workshop. And so that kind of put it in my ear. I was like, oh, it's not that easy there, Kevin McNeil. So then one day I said something about doing a workshop in our chat, and Ted was like, let's do a workshop. I'm like, okay. And I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
Like at all. Like I didn't know anything about it. So I started looking into it. And that summer, whenever it was, or that spring, we did a workshop and we sold 2 sessions out like that. And all this is building. And then I'm becoming a little bit more known in photography. And I'm getting to the point where I'm like, getting private workshop requests, but I can't take the time off for it. Yep. Because I have this job and they didn't approve my time off, or I can't like just call out and let my team down. I'm like, man, I would make as much in 2 days as I did in like a week working this other job. It became the struggle. And then when that management job ran its course and I stepped out of that role, I gave myself a 5-year goal to start doing it for a living. Another company came and bought that company out, and all of my stock options and my stock that I have with the company was paid out. So I was like, all right, you know what? This is my nest egg. It's the sign. It's now or never. And I've been doing it since, and that was in late 2017.
Fantastic. So let's talk a bit about the book. Obviously, the Ebb and Flow book has recently come out. What drove that process of saying, okay, a book's a good idea?
Yeah. So it's a book of my waterwork. It is called Ebb and Flow. This is an advanced copy that I have here. Super nice. I'm really happy with it, really proud of it. But in just the way that I interact with nature and what water specifically brings to me and how important it has been in me fighting my demons, it felt like the work was more important than just throwing up on a website and letting it sit like that. I wanted to present it in a way that was in line with its significance personally. So for me, that meant a book. And there are a lot of barriers to doing a book. One of them is financial. I never had the financial capital to pull it off until recently. And so that was like one of the very first things that I did when I realized that I could do it, was dig into my plethora of water abstracts and textures and stuff like that, and put together a book showcasing the beginning of my journey in this relationship that I have with water. And I've been exploring it with intent ever since 2017, trying to photograph it in every way possible. It's hard to tear me away from photographing water when I'm doing it. There's no flashpoint of me saying, oh, I'm going to do a book. I just always knew that it needed to be something significant and not just thrown up on a website. And still now, like you can't find the images on my website except for maybe a couple. They're all in the book. So to see the majority of the work, you got to get the book.
You got to get the book. That's not a bad marketing strategy.
Not a bad marketing strategy. Maybe eventually once it gets out there. I know I've had some print requests from people who have seen some of the images, and some of them are included in other areas on my website. Sure. But by and large, the collection itself is not. So I'll probably put a small selection of images on my website, but the majority of them are going to be in the book.
So you're working with a publisher, or is it a self-published?
Yep. A mix of both. So the gentleman that I am working with, his name is Jerry Greer, and he has brokered a lot of prints or a lot of books for people by working with the printer and stuff like that, who is based in South Korea. But he wanted to start his own publishing imprint. So his brokerage is Mountain Trail Press, and his publishing is Platinus Editions. And since we both needed something, like I needed a publisher unless I was going to self-publish, and he needed somebody to publish, we did a mix. So I covered the whole cost of the book, and I'm getting 100% of the profits, but he's also helping to use my book to build his publishing side, and he's going to be doing work with me on that end too. So it's a mix of both.
Nice. So when's it out?
So they're currently, it is, what's the date? It's the 4th, April 4th today. And they're on a ship somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean on their way. And I am on a trip next week. And then I come back, immediately go onto a private workshop. And the day after I get back from that private workshop, they're supposed to be delivered. So around April 21st is when I'm supposed to get the shipment. And then I'll be working on getting all the pre-sales out once that comes.
Fantastic. And people can buy that on your website, anywhere else?
Yep. No, just the website for now. And I don't know when this podcast is coming out, but it's going to be pre-sale prices, which is a little bit of a discount until once I get the books. Once I have the books and I'm able to ship them out as I get orders, then the pre-sale price won't apply and the price will go up. Not a huge amount, but sure. Prior to me getting the books, there is a discounted pre-sale price. And you can go to my website, tjthornephotography.com or andflowmonograph.com to get to it.
No worries. This will be out, I think, 20-something of May, so the last week of May, I think.
Should I re-answer that and being like, oh, you can currently buy it now?
Yeah, why not?
So the question was, when is it available? Is that what the question was?
Yeah.
It's available right now. You can go to my website, tjthornephotography.com. It's going to be pretty prominent on there. Or I also have a redirected URL, ebandflowmonograph.com, that you can use to get to it. We had pre-sale prices a couple months ago, and those went pretty well. But you can go there, and you can get just the book. You can get the book with 1 print, 3 prints, or 6 prints, each a different price tier. And all the prints are printed. I bought a 44-inch printer that I have no business buying, but I did anyway. So I'm going to start printing all my own work and having control of the whole entire process. So all of the included prints are going to be printed by my own hand here in my printer. And it's something I'm really happy about.
Very nice. I guess one of the things that comes up when people start to look at photography as a full-time career is that balance between their own creative vision and artistic integrity and what sells, what the client demands and what those commercial demands are. How do you balance that? Do you just go, I don't care what the customer wants, this is what I do? Or are you more trying to blend that customer feel to it?
No, it's my creative authenticity has always been really important to me. And I don't want to say never. I don't think about the customer, really. Luckily, the photography business that I have built has gone along with that early vulnerability. Most of my business comes from teaching creative workshops, and we don't go out to just capture the icons and capture the same photos everybody else does. It's more a talk about, there's a little bit more of a philosophical side about connecting to the landscape in your own way. Yep. Recognizing opportunities, and just basically my whole philosophy behind photography and what I do and how I do it is the focus of the workshops. So we spend a lot of time just out in nature in the middle of the day, arriving on location and not necessarily looking for things to shoot, but more being in a receiving mindset. I think one of the podcasts I was on with Matt Payne, he called it transactional. So we're not going out for this like transaction with nature where it's I'm going to come to you and you're going to do. It's like we go out and instead of putting energy, that's another way that I kind of frame things in my mind is that instead of going out into nature and looking for something to shoot and putting all this energy out, I just let it all go and I let things come in. And then whenever things like interact or catch my attention, that's when I interact with them and get lost in my viewfinder. And I just feel like those moments, those are personal moments to me. A lot of times it might be just a fleeting thing of light. It's every decision in my life brought me to that moment to witness that light hitting that leaf in that way. And when I point my camera at it, it feels like that moment is made just for me. And that's personally significant to me. And what I get out of it is personally significant. So it's about that. And luckily, that's what I've built my business around. So I'm able to put out work that fits within my creative authenticity and make my money that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard on the print side. A lot of people like the more dramatic, and I'm in a niche. So it's harder to find print customers, which is why I had no business buying this 44-inch printer. But I'm determined to make it work somehow. And
Yeah, I've got to
somehow
say,
I've been getting a lot of orders, like big, like multiple. I had a 30 some print order for an
wow.
apartment complex, and it's all been abstracts. So that's a little warming.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. Very nice
Yeah,
to hear.
very encouraging.
Before we started recording, you talked a little bit about not liking the marketing side of things. How do you deal with that dislike of selling yourself and selling your babies, if you like?
Yeah.
How do you get around that and get into that hard-nosed business mindset that you do need to have to say, I'm going to sell myself or sell my work?
I suck it up and I feel dirty afterwards, basically. But yeah, even I'm like sending newsletters out, like people are signing up for your newsletter because they want to hear from you. Like they sign up expecting to hear about your services. But I always feel like every time I send a newsletter, I'm just like asking people to give me money. Of course, as I'm a business, I'm like, they're not just handing me
What every
money.
business does, yeah.
There's a service that comes with it, but I just feel dirty. And I try to not be super overt with it. If I post
Yeah.
something on Instagram, I'll be like, here's a link that you can visit if you want. Check out my new work and click this link to get it free. I'm just like here's a you can if you want, you can go to my website. If you like, no pressure. It's not a good business strategy, but and I suffer from it. And I know that I'm being hyperbolic about it. It's not one side or the other that you can
Sure,
do
sure.
a blend of two, but I don't know. I don't think super highly of myself and I have low confidence and I suffer from mental health things. So some of that plays into it. I have a pretty bad imposter syndrome. I think learning how to deal with those things will help me in that regard, which is something that I'm exploring now. I'm going to start working on my mental health a little bit more than I have been,
Yeah.
and maybe a little bit of growth in that area and accepting myself more can help me in marketing and business a little bit. But right now, it's been tough.
Yeah.
It's been
I,
tough to.
I honestly think that old adage, love yourself before you can love someone else,
Yeah,
is very true. You do have to learn to, I guess, love what you do in terms of, hey, I'm actually pretty good at what I'm doing. And I'd certainly say that about your work. You're very good at what you do.
thank
Wouldn't
you.
be talking to you otherwise. And there's obviously enough people out there. You sold 30 prints, which is probably more than I've ever sold across my entire career. So that's pretty good going. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was a surprise, and that's honestly what enabled me to do the book was getting that order. So it was very helpful.
very nice. Very nice. One of the things that we're talking about, the things that we don't always like to talk about, but how do you price your work and how, how do you, is it, you come up with a number or do you sit down and do some analysis and say, all right, the print cost is this and distribution cost is that, and then I need a certain profit and certain things, certain images might be worth more because they're more popular. How do you do that analysis or is it more off the cuff?
It's a little bit more off the cuff. One of the things, part of getting this printer to print my own work was to completely revamp my print business because I've tried following other people's models that don't necessarily fit they don't mesh well with my personality and my work. I
Yeah,
was doing like trying to sell giant prints, super expensive, like going for that really high end market.
Yep.
And I've had a couple orders here and there, but never would consider myself successful by any means. It wasn't,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
consider it an income stream even. But a lot of that was based on just like market research and just seeing what other photographers were charging. And coming from a restaurant background and food costs and costing recipes and stuff like that. I can manage a spreadsheet, so I would get spreadsheets, and like I had a list of photographers on one side and their sizes and their price per square inch of that they were charging, to see if there was any kind of theme or any kind of like thing going on there. So I did a little bit of that, but it basically came down to kind of seeing where other people were, what they were charging, then pricing myself a little bit underneath that to build my business a little bit. Which again, like I said, I didn't have a lot of success with that model. Going to this, I'm going to basically I'm simplifying, because that's what my work is, simplifying. It's simplifying my experience, it's simplifying the scene and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to simplify my business too. And anytime that I do something that is in line with me is when I see results. When I try to do what other people were doing and try to copy it and mimic it, I don't see results.
Yep.
So just going down to one paper that works for me, and small, medium, large, extra large, and doing the bigger stuff by request is going to be my model. And it's going to be the same thing. I'll just look and see what other people are doing. I'm a terrible accountant. I'm a terrible businessman. I don't dissect everything to see what my costs are, how much profit I need to make and things like that. I probably should, but it's been working so far, so we'll just go with that. I live pretty.
Go on.
I was gonna say I live pretty simply. I don't spend a lot of money. It's more like I make what I can and then I live within that.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's always a challenge for creative people to get into that hard-nosed business mindset and understand accounting and marketing and all those other things that you've got to be, particularly when you're in business for yourself. It's not an easy thing to do, is be all of those departments that an organization might have is coming from the restaurant business. There was somebody else doing the marketing and doing the imagery around selling the product, and you had people doing the actual cooking in under you as a manager. Trying to do it all yourself can be quite a strain. How do you?
And I think I was just a commentary on that. I think if anybody was considering going full time or doing this for a living, that like studying that over photography is going to be more important, more beneficial. I would even say if you want to do this for a living and you're planning on going to a school, go get a business degree, understand that side of things, be comfortable with that side of things, because stress and frustration is a huge impact on creativity. And
very much so.
If you're trying to run your business and you don't really know how, or you feel stressed out and frustrated by it, like you're going to suffer on the creative side. So I know I do. So yeah, that I would say understanding that side is almost more important than the creative. We know there are plenty of photographers out there who can run successful businesses and make a really good living, but maybe their images might not have the pizzazz that a lot of other people have. So that comes from their business acumen.
Talking about where you live and where you shoot, how has that influenced how you shoot? It's obviously influenced what you shoot, because the space around you is what you're shooting. How has it influenced how you shoot, or has it?
It's a good question. I don't know if it has, because when I look back into my past and places I've lived, I still shot the same way, even if I wasn't aware of it. So I think obviously what I shoot is impacted by that, and how I shoot. Here's an example: is like when I go to New York City, I'm still seeing the way that I see in nature. I'm seeing abstracts, I'm seeing textures and patterns, I'm seeing plays of light, I'm seeing all that kind of stuff. So I think as long as I'm still remaining in that authentic mindset, and just like, instead of looking for things, just being open to things, like those same things jump out to me. I think the biggest way that it has impacted how I shoot is just by giving me the opportunities to go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's changed how I do it, just what I do, or what I shoot.
Have you got a favorite location that you just keep getting drawn back to because of something in that landscape, or is it?
Yeah, I go to a specific place in Olympic National Park, and that is where I go to Like when I'm like, I need to get right with myself and I'm in a bad place and I need nature and I need to immerse myself, I go there. And I go there because there's no cell service. I go there because it's a beautiful fairy tale forest with next to a rushing glacial river. And there's not usually a lot of people there. So I can go there and just tune out, tune in, and fill up my spiritual battery. So that's like the one place that I go. But literally, you can take me anywhere in nature and put me somewhere where I can smell the smells and feel the feels and hear the hears, and I can manage. It's just, I find gratitude for those moments no matter where I am.
Yeah, cool. Do you prefer shooting alone or with other people?
Yeah, definitely alone.
Yeah,
And yeah, when I, and just because I like to go at my own pace. I like to
yeah,
not feel like I'm keeping anybody or anything like that. My girlfriend is a photographer as well, and we're alike and different in a lot of ways in the way
yep.
we photograph. But I know that I can spend an hour photographing the same ripple in water, um, and it'll be completely fine. But I go out with friends and stuff like that. I'm definitely not somebody who like meets up with people that I don't know to go out and photograph. It's definitely a very meditative and personal process to me. So I like to do it alone.
Yeah. What's the most memorable photography experience that you've had?
Ooh, most memorable. I don't know if I have an answer for that because they're all significant in their own way.
Okay.
Maybe something recent that was is memorable because it was different. A lot of my work when I'm photographing, it's very calm and peaceful and serene. But last year on one of our workshops in Death Valley, we had an insane windstorm, like
Yeah.
the kilometers per hour, but it was like 40, 50 mile per hour sustained winds in the sand dunes. And that was invigorating and it was exciting. And like seeing the looks on the clients' faces. And like I have a client, a repeat client who does a lot of stuff with me and the nicest guy you could ever meet. And he just looked at me and I've never heard him swear, but he just looked at me. He's like, TJ, this is awesome. I was like, and it was like, just so like, and it was like,
Yeah.
I'm a really reserved person, but I was like hooting and hollering. So I guess that's a good answer. It was a really memorable, exciting thing to be a part of, and just in the windstorm. And we had 10 people between me and Alex on our workshop, and I got stuck with two clients that have done numerous things with me who I consider friends. So it was all, and you couldn't see any. There was so much sand, you couldn't see anybody else. It felt like me and these two guys had the world to ourselves, and that was pretty awesome. Good
Yeah.
memory.
Are you one to race home after a shoot and put the images on the computer and get stuck into editing, or are you one
So
that leaves and sit there and
I
maybe
think that
maybe in a
I
week
think
or a month or
yep. It could take me a while. Yeah, I'm not in a hurry whatsoever. And just the spot that I'm in lately, with the challenges that I'm going through. I've been in a bit of a creative rut. I mentioned not putting any work on my website since 2021.
yep,
And most of that is because I need the beginning of the process. I need that time in nature. I've been going through a lot mentally and emotionally. So I need that front end of the process. But when it comes down to the back end, I need not the pressure of business and work, which is
yep,
terrible. But I've been letting that happen. But I still want to share things. I want, and this is something that I'm sifting through with my process, but I want to feel a little more free on that end, a little less the demand and the responsibilities. A lot of the images that I've been sharing on Twitter or in my Instagram stories are very lazily processed, if at all. And most of them are sent from my camera to my phone using the Wi-Fi.
yep.
And then I process them in Snapseed, banding and sensor spots and everything, and like post them in a story. Because I still want to share things, but I don't want to like get home and upload them on my website and keyword and put them on of
Yeah.
my products and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, I'm very terrible at taking my memory card out of my camera and uploading things to my computer. And I have an insane backlog that I'm working through right now. I have 15 images that I've finally put through my process in a serious way rather than just giving them a curves adjustment and posting on Twitter or whatever. But yeah, no, I like to let things marinate. It helps with the process.
Yeah, no,
Duration.
that's great. You mentioned some of that community building, and how do you see community in the landscape photography fraternity building, and how do you think we can support and learn from our peers in the field?
I think I've made a lot of really good friends in the industry. I'm a huge introvert, and I'm a little bit of a loner. I keep my circle small.
Hmm.
A lot of I don't have a lot of friends, but the friends that I have are quality and really good friends. So it's hard for me to reach out in that community and feel like I'm including myself. It's a very photography and nature are important, like hugely important to all of us, and we all connect in that way. It's
Yeah.
an easy place to find people that you connect with, and there are a lot of really good people out there. I love seeing the work that everybody has. I think that just social media in general has created this dynamic. It's made it easy to disagree, and the I think a lot of the negative things get more attention than the positive things. It's easy to be riled up about something and be angry about something than it is to love something and share something. That's why how many times do you like eat a wonderful meal but you don't leave a review on Google, but that one terrible meal that you eat, it's you're writing a review, right? So bad word of mouth definitely travels faster than good word of mouth, and I think that's true with social media. So a lot of times I just get really turned off by all of the drama and all of the arguing. And there's always a hot topic of the day, right? It's
Yeah.
post processing and how much processing is too much, or composites, or NFTs, and now AI. And
Yeah.
to me, it takes away from the creativity. And I feel like a lot of social media has just created so many opinions about what other people do that doesn't really affect us, and I shy away from it because of that. I don't want to, and I keep my interaction. I'm a positive person. I like to support people. I one of my life mottos is lead with love, and I want to leave a positive impact on the world. So feeling like I might say the wrong thing or get in the crosshairs of the wrong person just leaves me a little sterile and basic on social media. But I try to reply to every single comment in a meaningful way. I try to call thank people by their names, and that's all important to me because we're all people, and we're not just words on a screen or profile photos. So I try to look past that and see the people behind it. But yeah, I think I keep the drama, and I think the industry at large as a whole, like at an arm's length,
Yeah.
just to preserve my mental health and stuff.
Yeah. It's funny, people notice that one, they may get 1,000 comments on a post, for example, and 999 are positive, and there's
Yep.
one that's negative.
And yeah, and
You
it
always
tears you
focus on
up.
that negative one.
It tears you up, and like I've almost, especially there are certain places that are known for that, like YouTube. Like never read the YouTube comments,
No,
right?
no.
Think like it could be like a picture of a puppy playing with a tennis ball, and somewhere in there somebody is being racist, or they're making it about politics
Yeah.
or whatever. And it's just I feel social media, it's enabled so many things, but I think the side effects of it, like the negative side effects of it, are pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Just based on like how it steals our attention and how addicting it can be, and just like how easy it is to type something out and be rude. I'm very cautious of it. And I have my issues with it. I probably spend way more time on it than I should, but I'm trying
But,
to wrangle that in.
yeah, I've taken to asking people that leave negative comments if they're okay,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
to, you know,
Yeah. I try to
try and
not take it.
change the conversation a little bit.
You, like one time there was this guy that was mad at me in traffic, and he's like yelling at me, and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Do you think you're going to be okay? Do you think you'll get through this?
Yeah.
And then it's just like I guess my hope is A, that I'm insulating myself from really letting that affect me, and B, that like maybe they'll be like, oh, you know what? This really isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But
I've
it's
overreacted. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like but everybody has their thing that they're going through and that they're struggling with, and they deal with that in different ways.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it's taking it out on other people, and sometimes it's holding it in, and then it becomes too much to hold in, and then you explode. I try to not let somebody else's trash blow onto my side of the street, so to speak.
Yeah. Good philosophy. What do you see as the future of landscape photography, and what do you see as the biggest challenges facing landscape photographers at the moment?
I don't know. don't think about things like that. I know a lot of people right now are concerned with AI, and there's the arguments all around that. And some people are really upset about it, and some people are like, "Oh, it's great, it's cool." And then there's the whole. I don't get involved in all of that. All I know is what I do and what it gives to me, and that's all I know. I feel in terms of, I feel like there is a more of a focus and a shift on intimate scenes and things like that, which is encouraging because we've all seen the same photos over and over and over and over and the same comps over and over and over and over, so things become a little stale. So anytime people are, I know what photography has given me and what I've gotten in life out of it. So anytime that I see people really taking an interest on growing their creative vision and engaging with photography in a more personally meaningful way. And that's not to say that bigger landscapes aren't personally meaningful or can't be significant or can't be beautiful. All I know is what I get out of it. And I know that it's those intimate things. It does seem that there seems to be a trend going in that direction where people are wanting a little bit more personality in their own creative vision in their work. So that's encouraging, but I try to live in the present and just take each day as it comes and focus on myself and do what I do, and what other people do and what they argue about and whatever they're doing, it doesn't impact what I do and how I interact with nature and what I point my camera at. So that's been working for me. So I'm just going to keep doing that.
What do you like to do when you're not doing photography?
Is there anything else? That's what my life is, photography. And there's something to be said about that. Now that I do it for a living, I feel like all I do is think about work and photography, and I don't get much of an escape for it, which also might be playing into why I haven't posted an image on my website since 2021. But that's basically become my life, is photography. I like watching hockey. That's so when it's hockey season, I root for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pittsburgh Penguins, that's where I grew up. So they're actually playing right now, which is why I asked you if you wanted to do this a little earlier. It's the playoff race.
on the screen watching the game as we go.
No comment. It may or may not be the end of the first period and 2-0 for the New Jersey Devils, but we won't talk about it anyway. But yeah, no, I'm a pretty simple person. I like photography. I like nature. Going on hikes with my girlfriend and my son, and that's pretty much what I do.
Fantastic.
Come on, life.
Is there anyone else you think I should be talking to on the podcast?
Yeah. Mike, who has taken a workshop with me. He actually reached out for a private workshop one year, and it was a bad year. We had a lot of forest fires. A lot of the locations that we were planning to go were smoked out. I was like, "Are you up for camping?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, so I took him to my place where I actually run an intimate workshop there, where it's like that a lot of people are like, how do people ask me, clients are like, how do you see and do what you do? And the easiest way for me to do that is to take them to the place where that is where I do it the most. And it's basically just immersing yourself in. Anyway, I took him to this location, and he's only been photographing for a few years, but his creative vision and his eye are really good. Mike DiMiola. Let's see. I'm gonna butcher the word because he's from Catalonia, but it's a Jaume Joren, Jume, I believe it is. He has some really interesting work. Jared Armijo, who goes on Instagram by Away I Flew. He's really interesting to talk to about his work and the way that he sees things. I think those people would be pretty cool to talk to.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yep.
I've got one controversy that we've always tried to get to the bottom of in this podcast. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No. It's
not a thing.
No, that shouldn't exist. No, it's pineapple. Like, you're ruining both the pineapple and the pizza. Eat the pineapple and eat the pizza, but to eat them together, I know that's a hot topic, and I'm definitely a no pineapple on pizza type person. My girlfriend, she'll put. We always joke about it because she'll take like the two most opposing flavors. She's like, but it's salty and sweet. I'm like, all right, put some anchovies in your milkshake because it's salty and sweet. Go ahead, there you go, eat it. Salty and sweet. That works, doesn't it? It works, doesn't it? Just because it's salty and sweet doesn't mean it's good. But no pineapple on pizza. Get out of here.
Thank you.
What about you? What about you though?
Me, if it's on there, I won't pick it off, but I won't order it.
Yeah, I'd probably pick it off.
Yeah, I'm okay with it, but I won't go out of my way to get it. It's not on my order list. There's a particular pizzeria here nearby that does uh, it's their special pizza, and it's pretty good.
You could be a politician with that answer. You're
I
satisfying
could,
both
I
sides.
know. Got to keep both sides happy.
Right.
Oh, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me today, TJ. It's been absolutely wonderful getting to know you. Where can people find your work?
You can find me on Instagram at tjthorne_photography, I believe it is. My website is tjthornephotography.com. Those are the two places I post my work the most, or I'm on Twitter, which is Twitter, but at tjthorne_photo. But basically just Google TJ Thorne with an E at the end and you'll be able to find me. But yeah, no, I really appreciate you talking to me about this. It was a good chat. I always I'm always nervous to do these things. I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. But you did a good job. It was a nice, easy conversation. You asked a lot of really good questions for
Oh,
getting me here.
brilliant. Thanks very much. I try to make it as easy as possible to have the conversation because to me, this whole thing is about having those conversations. And I do say to some people, it's just you and me talking, no one else will hear it.
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
there's a couple of listeners out there. So
You're easy to talk to. So thank you.
thanks very much. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.